printed, and all the specs on every single one of them. I was obsessed. My dad handing me that book some 13 years ago set in motion the next 8 years of my life that I filled with research, study, and planning for a career in life with dinosaurs. Sadly though, at age 11 I had the realization that I couldn't pursue both my dreams of paleontology and having a family. However, this book did teach me some very important things. To be curious, to follow my passions, and to never give up on the future I want. As time went on, it didn't take very long for another book to influence me significantly. In first grade, I stumbled upon a colorfully covered book in my school library. This book was The Boxcar Children. I was skeptical at first, but I checked it out anyway. When I got home that evening, I ran into my room, perched myself atop my top bunk, and cracked open the book. I instantly fell in love. I was taken aback by the story and how these children were able to live in their own, with nothing but a boxcar, some wits, and the bond of family. However, I became a little too inspired by their display of success with independence. Less than a month after first reading the book, upon a large fight with my mother, I decided I had no choice but to run away. I had it all planned out. I'd live by the creek behind my house. I'd bring a suitcase with clothes and a house phone in case of emergency. And I'd pack my suitcase with bologna for sustenance. My plan was flawless, or so I thought. Nevertheless, I packed my bags and left. I felt strong, I felt brave, and I felt independent. I also felt scared, and I felt lonely. I missed my family, my dogs, and my home. It was too much to bear. Within 3 hours of leaving, I returned to my house expecting a warm, crying welcome from my mother, who obviously must have been grief-stricken in her child's absence, but instead I was met with nothing. She hadn't even realized I'd left. I was infuriated. I wanted to be welcomed home and hear cries of, "Oh, thank God he's here," but instead, nothing. However, this experience wasn't for nothing. It taught me that I was greatly misinterpreting the book. It took me running away from home to realize the true importance isn't independence, it's family. My most recent reading experience was with an older piece from 1915 by the name of The Metamorphosis. I decided to read this book because of a recommendation from my friend George, who knew I had to read a novel as part of an assignment. He gave me a brief description of the storyline of a man awakening one day as a bug, and I was instantly intrigued. I wanted to know more, to know the whole story, so that's what I did. That weekend, I sat on my bed with a PDF of the book pulled up on my phone, how I do most of my reading nowadays, and I read the whole thing in one sitting. I loved it. I particularly enjoyed the author's use of in media res that allowed the reader's imagination to ponder over what caused him to make the transformation. However, my favorite technique used by the author was the strength of his storytelling. This was especially seen in the beginning of the main character, Gregor's life as a bug when his younger sister was the only one who cared for him, and their love for each other was obvious. However, as the story progressed, she was the leading force in convincing her family that Gregor wasn't truly their son anymore. This technique helped me empathize with the suffering Gregor experienced through losing his entire family right in front of his eyes. I very much recommend this book to anybody due largely in part to how powerful of a read it was. My favorite experience with the book was when I was in 3rd grade. After my parents' divorce, my father was looking for a way to spend more time with me when I was at his house on alternate weekends. His solution was a book titled Tom Sawyer. He planned to read it to me while I fell asleep in bed so that we could talk and he could make sure I went to sleep at a reasonable hour. At first, I didn't like going to sleep with someone so close to me because I felt vulnerable. But over time, I learned to enjoy it. My dad would read to me for hours, and we would joke and laugh and talk about the cunning mind and thrill of Tom Sawyer. The story gave me amazing dreams of exploring both while awake and asleep. I made rafts, bridges, and other makeshift contraptions, all inspired by the book. Tom Sawyer helped me look out into the world with awe, and helped me want to explore and always live the life to the fullest. Tom Sawyer is a book that will always take a special place in my heart, as the book that brought me closer to my dad and opened my eyes to the adventure of the world. Sadly, though, my reading has since declined, and the most reading I do today is school assigned. However, I'll never give up hope, and I will always welcome the next book that will change my life with open arms and a warm embrace.
That's it?
You wrote this?
Yeah.
I am astounded. That is excellent. Very excellent. High fives.